This is an invitation to expand our vision, traveling in nature, in time and history, seeking answers that will allow us to find the true meaning of being human. Hello, my name is Yanis Rosé. I am a biologist. Biology is the science of life.
I have always liked to analyze evolution in a more creative fashion because it could help us to better understand the universe, nature, and our personal lives,
And perceive some cosmic dimensions of which we are part, in order to better interpret what is the purpose of the life of the human being. For many, evolution is restricted to the bones of extinct animals that are stored in museums or buried in some still unexplored regions, dinosaurs and other primitive animals from a far distant past. What we don't realize is that evolution is an ongoing process that continues at every moment. Several years ago, I had an experience that gave me a different perception of what the creative evolutionary process might be. I traveled to Venezuela, to the central region of the Llanos Savanna, where the Orinoco River receives Meta River, and nature still doesn't show strong human influence. The shores of the river and islands have the rich cover of the gallery forest, with its plants and animals. For some time, I was active there, studying a turtle that the Venezuelans call arrau. Once a year, between 15 and 18,000 turtles migrate along the Orinoco to a few islands and beaches to lay their eggs. It is a cycle of replenishment and renewal. My routine was to observe the turtles, how they migrate, what they do on the beach, and how they lay eggs. In short, the ecology of the turtle. After having spent quite a few days and nights literally living with them, I found myself one afternoon sitting at the water's edge observing the sunset and the disappearance of the last basking turtles. The moment of quietness during this splendid sunset liberated me from the intensity of the study of the turtle's ecology. What remained was a serenity, the tranquility of the river, with the waves gently caressing the shore, producing subtle and rhythmic undulations.
At that moment, as things tend to happen, my consciousness and heart was filled with a fascinating vision of the Earth's early history.
I felt that I had transported myself several billion years back, when the Earth was a silent celestial body moving around the sun. There was only the water, rocks, and the sky. There was nothing else, no living creatures. It was a moment of waves splashing against the shore and washing and polishing the rocks. The sun's rays arrived with all their intensity, spilling their energy like a solar blessing over the entire earth. That energetic moment was like a dialogue between the sun and the earth. It looked that something was forming. And then it seemed that in these waters something extraordinary was taking place. The power of solar energy, the ultraviolet light, the volcanoes that at that period were so active, and the violent electric discharges in the atmosphere began to shake and twist the molecules that were floating in the water. They, in turn, incorporated some gases that were floating in the atmosphere surrounding the Earth. In the beginning, everything was relatively simple, but the sun's energy continued to spin and weave the molecules.
And as if by a secret design, the organic molecules suddenly came into existence. At that moment, the matter demanded to become something different, demanded to become a better expression so that from it a new reality would emerge.
The organic molecules got together in conglomerated clusters and covered themselves with membranes, separating them from their aquatic world, and so began the continuity of their existence. Life began its journey on the Earth. It was as if there was a profound intent on the part of the first living beings to declare their independence from the rest of the molecules surrounding them. It was a silent affirmation, I manifest myself. It was like a decision to declare, I defend myself. Actually, it was an exclamation of the earth.
The first great birth to give life to a new life.
For the first organisms, the life got complicated because there were places in sunlight, places of shade, salt waters, and fresh waters. Every one of these new beings occupied its preferred habitat.
Everything continued like a great dance, the dance of transcendence of the first living units, giving rise to more and more diverse living units, each one seeking its very own expression, its very own happiness, always adapting and adjusting to the conditions where they could possibly exist.
The Devonian era arrived about 400 million years ago, when all waters were teeming with fish. Million years later, in the Great Mesozoic era, dinosaurs demonstrated their greatness. Life was a magnificent expression of the creation. Here in the Argentinian Patagonia, on the site of Chocón, the evidence of the past was captured in these fossil footprints. Many millions of years ago, dinosaurs walked here. These are their footprints. Walking along them, one feels as if walking this whole process. When life demonstrated its great abundance, covering the entire earth with animals and plants. here in Patagonia, they are a large quantity of bones of fossilized prehistoric animals. And these petrified tree trunks strewn over the entire area tells us that in this desertic place where I am standing now, millions of years ago, there stood an exuberant forest, perhaps subtropical, rich in trees and other plants and animals. And when the dinosaurs vanished, mammals became the next great dominant group. But something more had to emerge, something new had to occur. Life was demanding a new process, a process that would reveal that there is not only an organic independence, but also a defined conscious independence. The primary substance was ready. It was then that Mother Earth's second great birth took place, bringing forth the next magnificent act of creation. Human beings emerged with their uncanny capacity to be successful on the earth, and with everything that they needed to put their own mark on it. The mark of the human being.
At that nightfall, by the Orinoco, I was awake, writing all these thoughts. There were the stars, the moon. I asked myself, what is this whole evolutionary process in which we humans are, so to speak, on the final wave crest of evolution?
And at that place, I suddenly felt that I, as a human being, was carrying with me all of evolution on the earth. The first rocks, waters, the solar blessing, the molecules that came together and formed life, the plants and the animals, and the conscious I.
We all are participants in evolution, in my blood, mind, cells, and in my history. I carry the evolutionary process that is continuing at every moment through my existence.
It was getting late, and I lay down in a hammock, or chinchorro, as they call it in Venezuela. I came upon the idea that we should examine evolution, freeing it from all the magnificent complications that we biologists have invented to explain it. We could think of the Earth as a large inorganic sphere, a lifeless framework that carries the seas, plants, animals, and all other organisms. But to see it in this way would be an incomplete vision, because the Earth in its entirety can be considered as a cosmic living entity. a living being.
So it has been considered by past and present civilizations
We could call it Pachamama, as it was called by the original peoples of the Andes, or Xbalaneuman, as the Kogis of the Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta in Colombia named it, and many more names.
In the 80s, the idea of seeing the Earth as a living organism became very popular. It was called Gaia, the name of the Greek goddess of the Earth. We could call it simply the Great Mother Earth. This, our Mother Earth, is constantly creating on her own body an expression that changes at every moment. It never remains the same. It evolves. And she's telling all of us constantly her own unique history, the life story of Mother Earth.
She tells it through her existence, with her rocks, with her dinosaurs, with her oceans. She tells it with the life of the great variety of her plants and animals. Through all this, and through us, the story of Mother Earth is continuing.
Actually, if we travel further back into the far distant past, we would discover that there is also a story that the universe tells us.
The story starts with the Big Bang, a primordial explosion by which matter came into existence about 20 billion years ago. Gradually, the galaxies began to form, also the stars and the planets. There was an ongoing evolution, and through it, the universe continues to tell its history.
Pondering on that, I realized the extraordinary privilege that we human beings have. The power to hear and understand the evolutionary story that the universe and the earth tell us is a privilege so extraordinary that I ask myself, why is it that we have it? What is the special condition thanks to which we have been given the opportunity to discover it? The universe and the earth tell us their stories in exactly the same way as each one of us does it, by living our life. The story of the universe, the story of the earth, the story of the human being. It is so interesting to emphasize the relationship between these three stories because it gives us an opportunity to reperceive in a new way what our life is. The universe tells its cosmic story. The earth tells the planetary story of its existence. And I tell the story of my own human life. We can see that apparently there is a significant interdependence and that we all are part of the same total story. On the earth, we have first the rocks, minerals, mountains, rivers. All this we could call the natural expression of the earth. Then there are the plants, animals, and everything else that we could define as the organic expression of the earth.
And finally, something we could call the authentic expression that the human being contributes as his part to the total story.
This story is really authentic, and it is worthwhile to examine the issue of our authenticity. When we say that something is authentic, we are actually making a commendation, because the use of the word authentic is always associated with valid, real, and genuine. Like these works of art that are an authentic and genuine expression of their creator. Persons who are authentic in what they represent and in their way of being incorporate in their expression the natural and the organic as well. The rocks and the minerals are fully expressing the natural. It was their way of being authentic. The animals and the plants have also fulfilled their task of being organic. What does it really mean that they do no more or less of what is expected of them? What sounds so obvious actually invites us to ask ourselves, did we humans fulfill our personal task of being authentic? Did we accomplish that which is expected from each one of us? Our body is made of atoms and molecules, a gift from the natural inorganic world. In addition, we have in our body systems, organs, tissues, and cells, and everything organic that defines us as biological organisms. But we also have our consciousness and our individual creativity.
In music, improvisation is the art of creating in the instant that the music is played. A musician takes what surrounds him and applies all his creativity, decides what note, what chord, what rhythm, what pause will be employed at every moment to integrate it into the larger melody in order to enrich it. When musicians release all their talent and energy, they fulfill what is expected from them. It is then that the most original and authentic melodies are generated that make us vibrate and thrill us.
What is expected from all of us human beings is to make good use of our individual creativity to introduce in the world things that are constructive, so that with my intelligence, my actions, my talents, and with my whole effort, I tell the story of my life in the most beautiful way possible, to find my own way to make myself authentic and to reach the state of plenitude that is sheer authenticity. The creative evolutionary process is an ongoing process. Evolution is taking place at this very moment, perhaps imperceptibly. It is like observing the sky in which the stars don't seem to be moving. It is like life marking the exact tempo for the passage of time, sufficiently slow to appear imperceptible, sufficiently fast so that we notice changes. We see our children grow, and we grow almost without noticing, only looking back in our memories or at old photos can we perceive the magnitude of the passing time. In many countries, almanacs in their various forms were probably the first publications that usually featured a calendar and religious festivals. In addition, included prognostications and predictions based in the study of stars. Humans have always enjoyed predicting events, predicting earthquakes and hurricanes. The delight of the sciences is the power of prediction, but in questions of evolution, it fails miserably. Actually, evolution is unpredictable. For scientists, this causes great frustration. If we ask at this moment where evolution is heading, we realize that we don't have the slightest idea. And what happens to us, human beings? Can I predict how my life will continue? All of us have thousands of intentions, and some just may be fulfilled. But it can also happen that an event changes my life totally. Paul Simon sings a very beautiful song. I am on my way and I don't know where I am going. This phrase describes fairly the human condition. It is a magnificent condition because one can take many different roads, creating and helping to create the world. I teach at the City University of New York, and I have been living in this city for many years. When I observe the faces of the people who walk on the streets, or the faces of my students, I feel that everyone has her own plans of what she will do and what to create with her own life. All of them carry within themselves an internal intention, pointing to what they would like to succeed. But it so happens that there is also an external reality that will be molding, changing, creating, and recreating their intentions. This is what is happening with all of us. Each unanticipated situation makes us take a different action or road. Another characteristic of evolution is its irreversibility. Evolution cannot go back. This means that biologically speaking, a reptile cannot turn back to become an amphibian, and an amphibian cannot go back to become a fish. This never happens. Evolution has only one direction, and there is no reversibility. Human existence also has the same condition. None of us can retreat because there is only one direction, only one movement, and this movement gives impetus to the creation. It pushes us to develop the creative person that we have been destined to become by the process of evolution. Therefore, the responsibility to grow and the opportunity to create are part of the human process. historical evidence of the cultures and civilizations of the past represents populations that developed, flourished, and for centuries lived organized lives. Then, after some sudden event, they quickly declined, leaving empty spaces or contributing to the emergence of new civilizations, and in some cases they just disappeared. Ancient Greece and ancient Egypt and such cultures as those of the Inca and Olmecs are also examples of this process. Studies of fossil remnants like the ones we can find here in the Museum of Chocón show us something similar. After a long and stable period, a new process begins to develop in a relatively short time, as if something pushes the species rapidly towards a change that will create a new life form. And in this way, it seems that the species affirm themselves and then make the next evolutionary jump, affirming and making the next jump, one after the other. Two evolutionary scientists, Stephen Jay Gould from Harvard University and Niles Eldredge from the American Museum of Natural History, New York, were the first to describe this evolutionary phenomenon that occurs as if in jumps. They called it punctuated equilibrium. Perhaps the collision of galaxies, the explosion of the stars, and cosmic catastrophes might be the jumps of the punctuated equilibrium of the universe. With reference to the evolution of the human species, we are still perplexed about the reasons why one species of simians twisted its destiny in a relatively short time that resulted in the emergence of the transbiological world. Combining purely biological features such as large brain size, opposable fingers, upright posture, and the use of language, humanity produced this magnificent evolutionary jump that awoke the I know that I am, the individual consciousness. The outcome of this extraordinary human evolutionary jump was the development of cultures and civilizations, creating what Teilhard de Chardin, that magical French priest and geologist, called the noosphere, the sphere created by human mind. Today, the noosphere covers the Earth in its totality. For human beings, the life also proceeds like a punctuated equilibrium. Graduation, marriage, parenthood, becoming a successful professional or winning athlete, getting elected as president are only highlights, punctuated moments when after a period of time a new situation is established. But the greatest punctuated jump that humans are invited to make is one that does not add more and more of the same. More success, more fame, more money, more gratifications. But one that represents the transforming jump for becoming completely and authentically human. Would Buddha, Muhammad, Lao Tzu, Jesus Christ be examples of this process? The idea of living at times in stability and the appearance of the necessity or the opportunity of change offers us chance to talk about two concepts of biology that we should explain: homeostasis and heterostasis. Homeostasis means to maintain the equilibrium or a steady state, to maintain the routine. The other process that we call heterostasis is the contrary. It is when equilibrium is broken, then something new and different emerges. In nature, every living being, organism, species, ecosystems try to live forever, employing homeostasis, maintaining things as they are. This is a conservative attitude. The human body tries to maintain its temperature at 37 degrees. There are internal mechanisms that are in charge of accomplishing it. That means that our body normally maintains a steady state, or an equilibrium, or a homeostatic moment. To conserve, to preserve, to maintain the system as is, all this pertains to the homeostatic tendency. In societies, the privileged classes try to maintain a status quo, emphasizing law and order. The less privileged classes explore the heterostatic mode in order to create more favorable living conditions. The individual seeks progress, revolutions, new artistic creations. New ideologies and lifestyles are examples of societal changes. Change and innovation. This is heterostasis. In nature, heterostasis produces newness and innovation, the mechanisms by which new species emerge. There are nations and societies that maintain for a long time a specific form and organization by using the homeostatic approach. But one day, something breaks down in the social environment, and suddenly there is a need to do something new, something different. Then we have a crisis, a revolution, an invitation to change. Wisdom is knowing when to maintain the equilibrium and when to mobilize efforts for change, to break the structures of the past. By combining these two modes, life for millions of years continued its existence. We always carry on our individual affairs, applying exactly the same principles, exactly in the same way as evolution does. We maintain our routines, but many times we have a need to look for something new or to change something. Why do we have this need? Because there is a creativity, this universal creativity that the human being carries within. If I have the opportunity to change something, the decision is in my own hands. And I would say in this, the wisdom to live is found. To advance on its way, human evolution is propelled by the individual process of every person, of all persons. From his own personal evolution, every individual incorporates the changes into the evolution of the Mother Earth, and finally into cosmic evolution. What a marvelous interdependence! We can look at external space and see the galaxies with their stars, and think of planets rotating around them, like in our solar system. Or we can look into the internal space within matter, and observe the constitution of an atom with its nucleus and its orbiting electrons. And we shall see with amazement that the design is repeated. What happens in the microcosm occurs also in the microcosm. The universe is growing, and so is the human being. If the cosmos is a growing entity, so am I, a growing entity. And I also am the one who creates using the available material from this magnificent evolutionary process. And we, as human beings, have the privilege to be the microcosmos of this macrocosmos. We are united in such a very interesting way because the processes that take place in the universe are also occurring in my own life. Quantum physics has been able to demonstrate something quite impressive. An observer influences the particles he is observing. Can you imagine it? By just looking at the tiny particles, one gives to them a new destiny, and in giving them a new destiny, the existing reality is being modified. And the new world is created. It is a world different from that which was going to be, a world modified by our influence. Do we really have all this power? Of course, we truly have it. With every act that we perform in this our universe, we are making a great difference, the great refiguration of reality. An old saying goes as follows: not a blade of grass will move without the trembling of the stars. Our minute actions can have unpredictable consequences in the chain of evolutionary events. And due to this, we have enormous responsibility and opportunity. If our perception is restricted to the isolated me, if I care only for me, I'm introducing into the world things that are not useful, things that will not affirm the great universal interdependence in which we are dwelling. Internally, every person is trying to accomplish something more with oneself, something that is related to a new way of being. Every individual is a carrier of the creative evolutionary process of humanity, as part of the evolution of the Mother Earth. That in turn is contained in the creative evolution of the universe. Does that sound too grandiose, almost omnipotent? But it is actually like this. I am the carrier of the entire process of evolution, from the natural to the organic, from the organic to the authentic, and therefore the entire process of the Mother Earth is in me. I am responsible that my own authenticity as a human being is expressed or not expressed.